Good afternoon, gamers, and welcome to a Sunday matinee episode of Games with Dave. Today, I had the pleasure of being joined by artist and RPG designer Matthew Myslinski from Driftwood Archives. Matthew has 5 days left on his highly successful Kickstarter campaign for his Mörk Börg compatible role-playing game Chainsaw, a rules-light, art-heavy RPG inspired by horror movies and slasher franchises. Welcome to the show, Matt. I'm so excited to talk about this today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to be here.
Oh man. So first and foremost, congrats on blowing things out of the water with this Kickstarter. That's got to be mind blowing to did you even have it in your wildest of dreams that it would be this successful? Or
we had a roadmap kind of set up, of where we could end up, where we thought we'd end up. Honestly, I am humbled. I didn't know what it would turn out to be. So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be just numbing in a way, I imagine, to be whoa, look at that number and be like, holy shnikes, that's big.
Wake up every day thinking it's a dream, and then you check the thing. Oh wait, no, yeah. We're still there.
Get up in a cold sweat and run to the computer, and you're like, nope, still there.
Yeah.
So one thing I always ask people when they first come on is, what got you into role-playing games as a kid? What was the first system that you played?
When I was a very small child, we were walking through a mall, and I saw a big banner in one of the windows of a Wizards of the Coast store back when they had those. Wow. And I saw the big red dragon, probably early 2000s. So my first love, my first interest was Dungeons and Dragons.
Nice.
As with many people. But my first game that I played was some Marvel game. It was like a diceless Marvel game, GURPS, D&D, and kind of taught myself role playing alone through all those manuals, trying to consume them. But yeah, it evolved from there to learn that there's so much more in the industry. There's so much stuff out there. So many different games for so many different purposes. And it's been great. It's been quite a ride.
Yeah. It is crazy, especially now with the indie scene just exploding.
Yeah.
How much is out there. And it's awesome because I love interviewing people that have these awesome ideas like Chainsaw and that are doing it all on their own. Unintentionally, I've become an indie RPG interview guy, and I have so fallen in love with the scene that it's crazy how much is out there now, though.
Especially Mörk Börg. There's an isolated mega community within Mörk Börg. It's very exciting.
I had Pele on, and I think he said that there's something 1,100 different, between modules and supplements and everything else. It's 1,100 products out.
Jeez,
with under the Mörk Börg banner, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
And he said, he never imagined that, kind of like you never imagined this. He's like, I never imagined that the game would garner this kind of following. And it's awesome. I love the Mörk Börg community, especially, I mean, between Pavu, Tommy, you, Scott, and I'm probably forgetting 100 other names of people that I've talked to, but it's just been so awesome to get to meet so many people in the community, and Brian, and
I think that's the great thing about indie games, because it's somebody getting really excited about some idea and then putting it out there and seeing what happens with it. And it's not like it's devised to make money or become this big thing. And sometimes we find the community for it, that other people are just as excited about the thing that we were excited about. There's a lot of heart in indie games.
There sure is.
So I love it here.
Yeah, it's great. So Driftwood Archives, how did that come to be? How did you go from Matt the RPG kid to Matt the Chainsaw creator?
Well, I mean, as I said, since I was a little kid, I always wanted to make games. I was always interested in RPGs. I was always interested in TCGs, board games. Um, Driftwood was my way of creating a platform through which I could then create other things that I was excited about. In the beginning, it started just me doing art, selling it on playmats and dice bags and things at conventions. But after COVID, I kind of realigned and decided to just go all in on what I wanted to do in the first place, which was gaming, tabletop gaming.
Nice.
RPGs are it's a good gateway to me into this kind of thing, kind of test the field and see how things work, as opposed to something with a lot more movable parts and pieces and things like that.
Yep.
So that it seemed like a natural first step, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. No, absolutely.
So after
makes
that,
sense.
this is kind of what we went into first.
Nice. And speaking of your art, dude, it is amazing. I was introduced to it through Wasteland Degenerate, Scott's project.
Thank you so
And
much.
oh, you're welcome. And I saw that art of, and I was just like, holy shit, Scott, who did this? And he was like, oh, this guy Matt from Arizona. And I was like, we've got to talk. And yeah, what got you into art really? Is that something you've also been into since your childhood, or?
I've always been a jack of all trades. Like I remember I was 8 or 9, like pulling the backs off of notebooks and just drawing on them like cards, cutting them out as cards or board pieces or whatever else I could think of. I was always taking notebooks and writing rules down. I didn't really know what I was doing, but there was something inside that needed to come out, and art was one way that I could express that in a way that I understood. So it just kind of developed. I mean, in the industry, I have 2 main disciplines. I'm usually a graphic designer, or I'm an artist. So the bulk of my work, I think, is pretty much in art. I've done illustrations and cartography for a lot of major RPG companies, TCG companies. So I don't know, when I get to something like this, it's a lot easier to kind of push it forward when I can do different pieces of it, and kind of go from there.
Gotcha. Well, it is the years of dedication to it show, my friend. Like,
Thank you. I appreciate
it
that.
is amazing artwork. And from what I've seen of Chainsaw, if the game is even half as terrifying as some of the artwork looks, like, I can't wait. I just can't wait. I love horror, so it's like, and I'm guessing you do too. So I mean, we can dig right into Chainsaw. There's a line near the beginning of the campaign page that has me feeling like you want to make players go down the Evil Dead road a little bit, with it saying, read some ancient words you can't understand. And that automatically made me think of the Book of the Dead and the cabin. And am I correct in that assumption, or am I reading way too much
that
into it?
that line definitely is inspired by stuff like that. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. The whole game entirely is an homage to horror. So it lets you play with those tropes that are already inherent in all the different games, or in all the different movies and books, I should say.
Yep.
It to a smaller degree, it's inspired by horror gaming too. But yeah, that's definitely one of the little Easter eggs in there. Yeah,
Yeah, I
among
saw
many
that
others.
and I could just picture the guy being in the cabin, or Ash being in there and like reading it and then being like, yeah, whatever. And then, his girlfriend dancing around in circles. So, one thing that has me really curious with this is, what, if any, are the odds of players surviving a scenario in this game? Because from what I've read, it seems like the brutality level could be, depending on the GM, I guess, could be like astronomical.
Well, Mörk Börg in general is a lethal system.
Yeah.
What's interesting is in most of my Mörk Börg games, there isn't usually death. My players are too smart. When we got to this, I don't know what it was about this, but in every playtest game we've played, there's been at least one death. At least somebody doesn't make it.
Nice.
But I mean, it's just like any other role-playing game. Like, you can turn the knobs however you want. So if you want a super lethal game where you're killing half the party, you can do that. If you want it a little bit less lethal, you can do that too. All the resources are in the book to allow you to kind of play how you want. So I guess it's up to the table. It's up to what kind of vibe you want to be. Because I mean, there's many different subgenres of horror as well.
Yes.
Some are very over the top, campy, bloody, gory, lethal. Some are more serious. So you could kind of pick which way is best for your table. I mean, it's going to vary.
Yeah,
it's going to vary completely.
I told you, I want to scare the shit out of my players when I get this. So I'm going to crank that dial up to like 15 and hopefully
Play the music in the back.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying to you. Like, I want to make it so ambient that it's like just walking into the room that they're going to be like, what the hell are we getting into?
Yeah.
And
I think on our first game, we killed all the lights, and we just had, I don't know if I have any here, but we have fake candles. So we put fake candles around the whole table. It was pretty fun.
That's awesome. I love it, because that's kind of what I'm thinking too, is just get some of those LED tower candles and put them everywhere.
Yeah.
And just make it super spooky in the room.
Yeah. These guys.
Yeah. Those guys there.
And then they got it's kind of broken, but they got like a little candle that moves.
So you probably made somebody at your table dive and they hit the candle and knocked it over. You gotta come up with a good story for it. So you mentioned all the different ways of doing things in how you can construct the game. And I was blown away that you're going to planning on having upon completion over 100 tables in the game. That is just bonkers. How long, in addition to the time planned out to finish it, has this been ruminating in your mind that you've been able to come up with 100+ tables?
The idea for the game is years old, but development on it's only been about a year. It's been about this year that we've been working on it. And yeah, it's does that answer your question?
Yes.
Or is that not deep enough?
No, that actually is perfect, because I was thinking it had to be at least a year plus the time you've got. I think it was September 2025 for the expected delivery date.
Correct.
If I recall.
September, October, sometime around there. We want to do it earlier, but that's what we're saying right now.
And that seems like about an appropriate time to come up with 100 really like solid tables of like, of like hooks, ways of dying, meat hooks and stuff like that. It's like,
the whole thing's going to be loaded with a toolbox that you can use for any kind of horror game. If chainsaw's not your thing, you can pull things out and use them in other games. Everything in Mörk Börg type games are modular. You could pull a table out and use it for whatever you need it to be, or add things in from other games. So that the table thing is something that I love about Mörk Börg style games, where there's a lot more randomness and less like follow the book here, this way. I mean, it's part of their whole thing. Make data, not lore. That's one of Mörk Börg's main tenets.
Yes.
So that's part of that goal. Like it's full of ideas for GMs to come in and kind of pull things out of it. I mean, you could generate your own monsters and scenarios all you want, or you could take your idea and then seed it with specific tables that you wanted that really speak to you. So yeah.
Very cool. And speaking of like the game, like the building the game yourself, one of the things I really like about it is the fact you came up with 13 ready to use killers.
Yeah.
I saw that in there. And I love the fact that it's 13 for one. And that had to be intentional.
Yeah. There will be 12 in the main part of the book. And then there's going to be an adventure at the end of it with a monster in it. I say monster, but it's a killer, basically, is what we call it. So there's going to be 13 entirely ready to go that you could just pull out and put into your game. But that
Nice.
accompanies a whole suite of generators, so you can generate up countless more, or append different things to those existing killers as you like.
Nice. I like it. One of the other things that kind of popped out to me was how you say there's quick character creation, so that if your character dies, you can build another one pretty quickly, and you could be the brother or something, for lack of a better thought, that rushes into a camp to try to save the day and fails, but which is the intent at my table. But if you want to hop back into the game with a new PC, can you walk me kind of through what's involved with creating a PC?
I mean, it's not something that I created. It's based on the bones of Mörk Börg and those kind of
Gotcha.
games, where you're basically taking your character sheet. You get a random ability from it, as well as a background trait that helps you kind of role play off of that. And then in addition to that, the GM can decide, and the table as a whole, what additional tables you roll to append it to that character. I mean, at the base level, all you really have to do is roll that first thing, decide what your HP is, and you're pretty much ready to go.
Awesome.
Once you have your abilities and everything ready. But that all happens in minutes. We wanted an experience, like in role playing. There's stuff all on one side that's more simulationist. Everything has to be real and thought out. And then there's more narrative and fun type games that are not that the others can't be fun, but there's more narrative games where the intent is to have fun at the expense of reality. It
Right.
doesn't all have to make sense and stuff. So one thing I decided is I didn't want players sitting around doing nothing. So like if you make a decision at the beginning of the game, you're an hour in of a 4-hour session and you die, I don't want you to have to sit there, or leave.
Yeah.
That's not fun. So yeah, we want players to come back into the game as soon as possible and just get back into it. And there's, in a horror game, there's always room for that. Somebody runs in from the outside somewhere, stumbles on the thing. There's somebody that's already hurt that you've come upon, that you find there. Somebody that's captured or imprisoned underneath the strange place that you're at. So there's always room to add new people.
That's so cool, and I love it because you just gave me this imagery of like finding someone and them trying to mouth run and not quite being able to spit the word out.
Yeah.
And by the chance they say run, it's too late.
And it happens in horror movies all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen things like Barbarian.
I have not seen Barbarian. I've been told I have to. That's an A24, right?
I am actually not sure. I think it is. It seems like an A24 type thing. Yeah.
I have not seen that yet.
But yeah, not to get into specifics about that one. That was just the first one that came up to me. But there's all sorts of instances in horror movies where they come upon some other person, somebody stumbling in, or somebody has already been there before you. So there's countless ways you can re-enter, after the campaign's already started. I mean, campaign's kind of it's not the correct term, like Mörk Börg is inherently built on one shots, in my opinion.
One shots, yeah.
But you can I don't know. You can always string it on if people survive. So we took that mechanic for this. I don't know if we were going to talk about that later, but we took that mechanic for here and applied it to franchises, because that's kind of what happens in horror movies, where you have one horror movie and some people, survive, and the thing's never ever dead. Jason's never dead after the first movie. Freddy's not dead after the first movie. So you move into the sequel where now he comes after who's still remaining. And you can tie it in that way. I guess you could spin it the other way. Like if you do kill the killer and you do want to, do more like a supernatural type thing, where you're more like, I won't say monster hunters because it's not really set up that way, but you could be monster, unfortunate victims where things just keep happening to them,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
move them into a sequel with a different killer, for instance. But yeah, the mechanics are all there. We use that instead of the calendar of Necrobill from
Nice.
Mörk Börg. So that's
Yep.
how it steps up through the campaign, and things get progressively worse. The thing gets nastier. The environment gets nastier, as they do in horror movies.
Right. Yeah, and heck, Jason and Freddy aren't dead after like 400 movies anyway.
Yeah.
So,
And even if
you know,
they
you
die,
can
they can always come back. Like
right.
it's a movie thing.
Yeah. And I love it. I have my now 14-year-old daughter. I got her watching horror movies probably way too young, like I did. I think it was Friday the 13th was the first one that we watched. And now every time she comes to see me, it's like, Dad, what can we watch this weekend? And I had watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with her. And that movie still freaks me out. I think it's
It's a
because I
freaky movie.
watched it. I watched it way too young, and like the opening music and everything to it just set the tone for that movie. She watches it and she's just like, "Yeah, what's next?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And yeah. So speaking of spooky and terrifying, what are some of the mechanics that you're introducing that you can talk about that are going to really ratchet up that fear and terror emotion?
I mean, one of the big ones is fear. Fear will always be in every campaign. Um, when stressful things happen, when scary things happen, or you're under duress, like you're trying to get the car door open, or you're trying to start up, some generator, or get the garage door up, before they get there,
Yep.
you're gonna have to make a fear check, and basically roll to see how your character does with that. The more you fail, the worse that will become, eventually culminating in panic, where things happen that you don't want to happen. And you generally make the scenario a lot worse for everyone involved. So fear is something that you have to throughout the game manage, and keep under control, or it'll become the best of you.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what I'm kind of picturing is fear could be you shaking while you're trying to unlock the car door or something.
Right.
Panic would be you dropping the keys and then accidentally kicking them down the sewer drain.
Right.
Or something. Gotcha.
Or
Okay.
screaming and everybody else panics because of it.
Right. Oh man.
Or you end up, in this moment where your friends are all trusting you, and then you run off somewhere else, because that's what your mind might think. It's still, panic is a thing that's common in horror role playing games. What we're aiming for is something that is in between normal panic rules and role playing. We want to give agency to the players to decide kind of how it happens.
Very cool.
So the table will be a little bit vague in how it interacts with them. I want to avoid just, you make a bad roll and then you end up out of the game for 3 rounds,
Right.
just like staring into the, so we're trying to hone it and play test it out the right way so that it, ends kind of where we want. We want people to feel afraid. We want panic to be a big element in the game, but we also don't want to take agency from players every single turn. Especially if their character rolled poorly and they have a horrible resolve stat, which is the thing that resists fear.
Right.
But yeah.
So speaking of fear and everything, there's so much stuff I picked out of this page. I was just, oh, you're fine. That I picked out of this Kickstarter page. I'm just like, that sounds so cool. Another was the nightmare rituals. What can you tell me about those?
We wanted to bring, like Mörk Börg has their scrolls, the magic.
Yep.
And every system that I've seen so far in Mörk Börg has something similar where you can have a little bit of reality breaking, fun with it. Initially there wasn't going to be anything like that, and then I realized that in horror there is a a place for that. Rituals represent things like you said, reading things out of a book that you don't necessarily know what it does.
Mhm.
Or Bloody Mary would be a ritual where you say, something's name 3 times in the mirror.
Yeah.
It's things like that where there's a potential for something good coming out of it, but there's a lot of risk involved with the back end because you're messing with powers that you don't understand. None of it will be ripped straight out of horror movies. It'll all be unique,
Yep.
but some of it pays homage to those things. This is in contrast to the other mechanic that goes with that, which is the cursed objects. You can find the Annabelle doll and things like that in the game. You can find things that inherently have power, often giving you something when you don't necessarily see the curse behind it.
Gotcha.
So those two go in tandem. But yeah.
That's so great. Oh, this thing's really helping me. Meanwhile, the killer's just like, I know exactly where you are now.
Yeah.
And
and some of it's serious, some of it's scary, some of it's more over the top, a little bit more campy. Like there's place for everything in here, of all the different kinds of horror that are out there.
Awesome. It is going to be so good, dude. I cannot wait. Like,
I can't wait to show everybody.
One thing that really stands out is the awesome guest writers that you have on this project. Some of which I believe were stretch goals even.
Yes.
And who are, for folks that may not know, who are the guest writers that you have working on this with you?
It's a pretty long list.
Okay.
But all of these guys are some of my favorite RPG creators, or artists that are working in tabletop games. Some of them are friends. Some of them are more like industry contacts that I've met during Chainsaw. And I don't know. I wanted to create a project. I've always done things before alone, like just by myself. And I wanted this project to be a challenge to myself, that I don't have to do every single little thing. Let a little bit go, and the project will be better because of it. Because if I'm the only one doing it, it's just my ideas. So what I did was I went around and asked my favorite, or I should say most of my favorite people, for the projects to come. I've saved a couple of my others.
Nice.
But yeah, I've tried to assemble a lot of my favorite people on the campaign, so that I can kind of get their creative input to it. So obviously you've seen Pele and Johan, who are the,
yes.
I hope I'm pronouncing the names correctly. I'm probably not. So I apologize if you guys are watching. But yeah, we got them on board, and I literally cannot wait to show you guys what comes out of that. They were the initial creators of Mörk Börg. We have a whole list of. I have it up right now.
I won't put you through.
Oh my god!
The
like
list.
I'm honestly like I'm trying not to fangirl over the names that are on here. I'm super thrilled that they were happy to come on board.
It's awesome. Like,
yeah,
I love it. Like,
yeah.
And speaking of stretch goals, you've unlocked a lot of stuff from the patch, more classes, and the writers, and you've got the one other thing I wanted to ask you about that I just popped into my head was solo play. That is going to be freaking horrifying, because I'm going to have to set the ambiance for myself and then just be like, no, I'm turning the freaking lights on here.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it was a zine, right, that you're doing for solo play?
Yeah, it's a zine. Right now it's 16 pages. It could be more, depending on how things turn out, but it'll be at least 16. The idea behind it is to allow people to play solo as either the victim or the killer.
Cool.
So you could play as your own, victim going through a scenario. And there will be scenarios that come out that are geared more towards a solo play. So that's not just the only thing that's coming. And then there's also another variant that you can play where you're the killer and you're trying to find, those darned kids or whatever.
Yeah. Pabu hopped in and said, hey. What's up, Pablo?
Nice to see you. But yeah, I'm super excited about that, and that's actually been the most popular add-on so far. So it seems like people really liked that idea.
Very cool. Another one that really popped out to me that if you've gotten it to the point where you can talk about it is the physical nightmare scenario of Screaming in the Rain.
Uh-huh.
When it says physical, does that mean doing something in person, or is it just a tangible copy of it?
So in the beginning, we had an early goal, an early bird incentive for people who backed in the first 48 hours, and they got a poster, and it came with a digital adventure, kind of like a little trifold. Throughout the campaign, a lot of people were interested in that, so we decided to do a physical version of it and add it as an add-on for anyone who wanted to grab it, or you can get it as a digital version attached to the poster. And the backside of the poster is a map that goes with it. Or you can just use the digital version, print it out however you like. But yeah, it's a little trifold, kind of like a starter adventure to get people into Chainsaw. But yeah,
my half a brain was thinking it was some kind of LARP thing, and I'm like, no, it can't be that, because who the hell would actually want to play like they were getting chased down by a killer? It's like, see, that just shows you.
Put on the mask, give them 10 seconds to run.
That would no.
Remember, it's very lethal.
Yeah. Oh boy. So with all but one stretch goal left to unlock and 5 days to go, how do you think you'll hit it, or is it?
So there's only one being revealed each time. So there's plenty more stretch goals to go.
I got you.
Yeah. We've just been showing off one for each thing so that people don't get too excited. But yeah, I think we're on track to hit that next one. And then we'll have to see what's around the next corner.
Very cool.
But yeah, the next one is let me make sure I'm not misspeaking, because it's been a very long week.
I'm sure it's been a very long month of doing this. It's like,
yeah,
just surreal city, of.
So at 40, Screaming in the Rain was the trifold, but the Nightmare Scenario zine that's coming up is a full 14 16 page zine. We don't have the exact number nailed down just yet, but I believe it'll be around at least 14 16 pages. But that'll be a full adventure, or as we call it, Nightmare Scenario, for people to sink their teeth into. And in addition to this, there's going to be a pretty sizable scenario inside of the book to begin with. So once we unlock that one, you'll have 3 different adventures along with everything in the solo play book, for those who are interested in that one.
Dude, that's a lot.
Which that's a solo game, but you can always take those ideas and pull them in, and with a little bit of tweaks and a couple rolling on random tables, you could set that up for a group play too.
Nice. People are getting so much with this, which is why I wanted to go in at the bloodbath level, because I'm just like, dude, there is so much here that it's like amazing.
Yeah, bloodbath is where the most value will happen. Once we unlock that next one, we'll be up past $200 retail. Wow. And at 125, you're getting already a bunch of benefit there. And the more stretch goals we hit before the end of it, you're just going to get more stuff piled into it.
It's like a giant loot box that just keeps spitting stuff out.
Yeah. I wanted to create value for people, and value of different kinds, so that there's a lot of different choices for people who want specific things. And if you go in for the bloodbath tier, then you have a whole bunch of things coming that you can use for a while to come.
Very cool. My friend, we have smoked my questions that I had. We just ripped through everything. Did we want to try and do our top 5 horror movies, or?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we could.
Or did you We could? All right, because I can shoot from the hip with. I didn't make a list, but I can definitely shoot from the hip if you're
I
up
didn't
for it.
either. I didn't either, but I'll start at the very top. My first favorite. And while tastes change and stuff, so there's a couple things that are more modern that I do like, but the thing that's close to my heart is Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nice.
I love Nightmare on Elm Street. That was my first slasher, and it's been a huge inspiration on a lot of the things that I create.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Freddy, I love the dark humor in those movies of like he'll, of course, every joke he's ever told while trying to kill somebody just left my brain as soon as I said that. But no, he'll be like, I don't know. You probably know him way better than I do of some of his quips.
But there's a lot of them.
There are a lot of them. Yeah.
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's fun, and it scared me as a kid because you can't go to sleep and scare it away. Like every kid is scared of the thing in the basement or the closet or under your bed, and usually going to sleep solves that because then you're awake, in the morning and everything's fine again.
Yep.
But Freddy was the one that you can't run from, because he's waiting for you in the dreams. So
Yeah.
I always loved how they spun that a different way, even before I understood what they were subverting, Yep. But that was my first favorite slasher movie.
Ooh, my favorite slasher. I always have a toss up with between like what would be my 1 and 2, and it would be Halloween or Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh yeah.
Halloween, because the way John Carpenter filmed that first movie with that blue light and setting the tension, with the music and everything is just perfect. And I mean, everybody's tried to copy it since then, and some have done a very good job. And then Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just freaking horrifying, having Leatherface chase you through the woods, the house, and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
the fact that they wanted it banned when it came out because of it being so horrifying was. And then I think like I was saying to you earlier, I think I was like 7 the first time that I watched that.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that I made a running jump from my floor into my bed to make sure that like Leatherface couldn't grab me from under the bed. And it's just,
I can't remember if it was that one or a different one, but one of those early slasher movies, they got in trouble because they acted like it was real. And all the marketing around it acted like it was real. And I think, the authorities were trying to look into it and make sure that nobody was actually killed on set, because it was very early, it was very early in the thing. And a lot of the scenes in that movie made it look really real.
Yeah. I know
Chainsaw Massacre was the first like true slasher movie.
Yeah.
In that way. I mean, Psycho came before that and a lot of other movies like that. But like Texas Chainsaw Massacre was really the first like modern slasher movie as we know what slasher movies are.
That was
so I don't think the world was ready for that. I know it was the 70s, but I don't know when exactly.
But yeah,
sounds about right.
I know they tried to get it pulled from theaters and all of that. And
yeah,
I mean, it was a much different world. Nowadays, if that came out, even in its original form, like I was telling you, my daughter watched it and was just like, what's next, Dad? And I'm like, really? And I'm like, come on, that movie scared the shit out of me as a kid. And she's just like, yeah, it was kind of spooky. Let's find something else next. And it's like, oh.
I remember I had a similar story because my dad showed me Alien when I was probably too young, the first Alien, and it was exciting. It was cool. It was really cool for what it was. And then they get to this scene where they split up, and even as a kid, I'm like, why are they splitting up? It doesn't make any sense, And the guy goes looking for the cat, and he goes around the corner, and there's this scene. I don't think it's that corny anymore, like looking back on it. But the first time I saw it, he basically goes around the corner, and the xenomorph just puts up his hands like this. And I just started laughing. And my dad's like, what are you talking about? This is supposed to be the scariest movie, ever,
I give up.
Yeah. What's funny is the more that I watch it as an adult, the more scary it is for different reasons, like the body horror and stuff. But as a kid, I wasn't
Yeah.
really like, it didn't sink in that way. I just saw it as a monster movie. So yeah, he was probably feeling the same way. Like, what do you mean? This is supposed to be scary.
Yep. Speaking of body horror, another one of my favorites is The Thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just such a phenomenal movie. And to think if the Swedish group had been able to get that dog, nothing would have happened. It's spoiler alert for anyone that hasn't seen a movie from like the 1980s. But what are some of your other favorites?
Obviously Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Scream was a big moment for me. I loved Scream. How you really didn't know who the killer was until the end. You thought that you had it. Oh, it's definitely this guy, and then he's in the next scene as Ghostface is killing somebody else.
Yeah.
So the reveal of that movie was really, really cool. Another, spoiler from a movie in the 90s. But yeah, I loved that. And then moving forward from there, I mean, of course, I love Friday the 13th and all the movies that fit within that genre. But more recently, I've been loving things like The Witch. And while it's not necessarily a movie, Haunting of Hill House and Midnight Mass, I love those kind of movies too.
Nice.
Or less movie, but it's like a limited series run on Netflix.
Yeah.
Where they have, a certain amount of episodes, but when you watch it, it seems like one big long movie. It seems like a big 8-hour movie, rather than a TV show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really love those. Oh man, I could probably go on and
Dude, I could
list
turn
so many.
talking horror movies into us talking for another hour, probably. What is the one of my buddies had talked me into watching it, and I thought it sounded absurd, and I actually thought it was pretty good, where they have the stone hand. Talk to Me? Is that?
I think that's what it was called. Yeah, they had some kind of I haven't seen that one yet, but they had some kind of hand where when you touch it, you can talk to the dead or something.
Yeah.
I definitely need to see that one.
It is pretty good. I had like balked at watching it 1,000 times. My buddy Heath was like, Dave, you got to watch this. You got to watch this. I'm like, dude, how scary can a movie about touching a hand be?
Yeah.
And then I watch it and I'm like, oh shit, this is actually pretty good. Like A24 seems to be on their game with making
Oh my God, yeah.
decent horror movies nowadays. And used to be Blumhouse. Now Blumhouse, I feel like, has moved into the more corporate, like not corporate, but the more predictable, I guess you would say, like type horror movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, the formulaic. And now A24 has stepped into that role of like, you may think you know what's going on, but you don't quite know what's going on.
I mean, my first movie that I saw from them was The Witch, and that's probably my favorite horror movie right now.
Nice.
Though it's not necessarily a slasher movie, it's a different kind of horror.
That is movie is a mind.
Yeah.
And
if I remember correctly, there's no jump scares at all. The whole thing is just tension being built. I think there's a scene where like the goat jumps at him, but it's not really it's not a jump scare. It's not really
it's just that goat.
It's kind of sudden when you watch it. Yeah. But like from there, you mentioned A24, but Midsommar and Hereditary are two other great ones in their list. Just scary movies. I love them.
Yeah. And they're, like you said, with The Witch, it's not this like jump out, scare you movie. It's just the tension, the palpable tension through that whole freaking movie. Right. And they used, what is that musical instrument they used? The Enigma machine or something like that, where
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up really quick. I think it's called like an Enigma engine.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Or something. Yeah. No, the Enigma engine, or the Enigma machine, is the code machine from World War II. Instrument used in The Witch. Let me see. Right. Yeah, it's a bunch of instruments built into one.
Huh.
And the apprehension engine is what it's called. And it definitely, that's a perfect name for it, because it's just, and it's so cool. I watched this video on how they make them, and you can buy one for yourself for the low price of about $15,000. But they're so neat because it's got like violin strings on one section, a couple boards from a xylophone on another section, and cranks and all this other stuff. And it looks like this just crazy thing. And then when you really start to learn how to play it, like they do in The Witch, it's just,
I need
so
to play
spooky.
one while I'm running Chainsaw.
Yeah,
you know.
I'll just dress up really weird in some like tuxedo and
Perfect.
just stand there playing that, and you can be like, "This is Lurch over here." Oh, well,
while we're talking about horror movies, you should absolutely check out Barbarian, because that one was a recent one that kind of caught me off guard. I did not know what I was going into. Don't watch the trailer, just watch it, and it will not be what you think it is. And it turns a couple times throughout the movie,
to spoil it on me, and I was like, "Don't tell me anything." And they're like, "Well, it's this." I'm like, "No, don't." And it drives me crazy.
Yeah, because trying to convince people to watch the movie, you may give away too much. Like it's part of the turn that makes it very interesting for what it is. For anyone that doesn't know what Barbarian is, it's just a girl who shows up, and it turns out that her Airbnb was double booked and somebody's already there. But it is not what you think it is.
That's just enough. There's already somebody there.
Yeah. But like going into it, that's what you see in the trailer. And if you don't look too deep into it, you think that's what it's about. But when you get deeper into the movie, it changes, and it's a ride, and it's awesome.
It sounds pretty interesting. Another one that's always thrown me for a loop and still makes me uncomfortable to this day is Hostel.
Yeah.
Oh, just the scenes in that movie of what they.
I was too young when I saw that movie. I watched that movie and all the Saw movies that I could. That definitely changed something fundamental in my head. But
that first Saw movie too is another one of those, just like, it was, I don't want to say ahead of its time, but it was such another movie that so many people have tried to kind of replicate since that came out, and they just can't touch that movie.
Saw's a very interesting one too, because Saw, when you just watch the first one isolated from the rest of the franchise, it's more of like a I don't know, it's just two guys in a room, and it's kind of like a police procedural drama behind it, trying to catch a serial killer. And the first three, in my opinion, are kind of that way. And then as they go on, it becomes just a gore fest, which is another thing entirely. But like Saw, I feel like did not begin that way, though it was gory. It was, in its own way, kind of disturbing. It wasn't. I don't know. It seemed like it was a little bit different in the beginning. Like I love the first three movies differently than the rest of the franchise. But that inherently is what the game is designed around. It's designed around like, does there need to be a sequel? No, but here's the sequel.
Gonna be,
because it's a staple in horror movies. If the first one does well, then we're going to have Scream 2, 3, 4, 5.
And
we're going to have six Child's Plays. We're going to have 12 Friday the 13th. So I don't know. It's something fun. Like if you don't take it too seriously, it's really fun. Oh yeah, Jason's back, and now he's in space, and now he's it's one of those fun parts in horror movies, in my opinion.
What was it, part 8, where they went to Manhattan? And it's like, come on. Oh, well, Matt, that was about all I had. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on that you don't feel like we hit?
Not that I can think of. It's been a very long week. So as soon as we shut it off, I'm going to remember 10 things.
You're going to be like, gosh, we should have talked about this.
Yeah. But the campaign's going well. If you are interested in what we've been talking about, we are live for another, it says 4 days. We end on Friday morning, at least Arizona time. But yeah, there's plenty of things to be excited about, I think. And this is also not this is just the beginning. This isn't the end of Chainsaw. So after it comes out and we release everything and people get to play with it, there will be more content coming in the future.
That was a question I meant to ask you. Is you've built sequels into the game, is there going to be a Chainsaw 2?
Probably like not. That's not the. I see what you're saying, but yeah, there will be there will probably be sequels to adventures that are published, and ways to use sequels in your game. But yeah, hopefully it's just Chainsaw for a while.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. And folks, get over there on Kickstarter. The link is in the description and also scrolling on the bottom of the screen. But jump over, back it, unlock that next stretch goal. And let's just keep blowing Matt's mind with this, because he has made what I think is going to be a freaking masterpiece here.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Folks, have a great day. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, maybe drop a comment in there, and maybe subscribe to the channel. But more importantly, go back Chainsaw. And everybody have a great day.
Have a good one.